Okay, welcome to the class on the government and politics of Northeast India. This is the unit 1, the features of the Northeast India. Actually, be the part 1. Okay, and there are two concepts, two themes in this unit 1 of the sixth semester. Of the BA Political Science honors under the Manipur University. And one is, of course, the features of the Northeast India, and the other is the traditional political institutions, the village councils, tribal chieftainship. And so today we'll discuss on the first part, that the features of the Northeast India. Now let's come to the brief introduction about the Northeast India, and particularly the how and when this concept, idea of Northeast as a geographical and the political administrative sense was developed. You know, today at this point of time, Northeast India consists of the 8 states. One is Arunachal Pradesh, second is the Assam, then Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, Meghalaya, and Sikkim. Okay, so if you trace back to the origin kind of a thing, then the first official use of the Northeastern region came when the Parliament in India passed the Northeastern Areas Reorganization Act 1971, which created the 3 states, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Manipur. So you heard for the first time this notion of coming the idea of the or in the political official sense. Other is the creation of the Northern Council in 1971, which is the at the Shillong, which has its secretary, and subsequently in the government of India also formed what we call the separate ministry for the Northeast, called the Ministry of Development of the Northern Region in 2001. So you have this kind of official recognition in the administrative and political and the government system. So, and of course, from that onwards, we started using the Northeast in the popular sense, and both within the region, rest of the India, and also in the context of the world. But how this you can look at the what is called the map to have this kind of understanding. But this Northeast concept also associated with the partition of India, where the region is being surrounded by the 5 countries of Bangladesh, Myanmar, or it was called as Burma, China, Bhutan, and Nepal. So over or around more than 98%, around 90% of the boundary are surrounded. And so, but suppose if you didn't have, if there was no partition of India into India and Pakistan kind of a thing, then it might have different nomenclature. So let's have that kind of understanding when you talk about Northeast as a region, and also in a different context. Now let's go back to history. That's important. When you say talk about the history, before the colonial empire came, British rule came, colonial rule came, the region was known by the different names, different kingdoms, like the Assam or Home Kingdom, then Manipur, Tripura, Kasari, and other smaller kingdoms, or the principalities, or the autonomous tribal areas kind of a thing. So that was there. And you have a very significant impact of the what is called the Treaty of Yandubu, which was signed between the then British India and the Burmese in 1826. It has a very significant development as far as the region and as far as the the relations between the British India and Burmese were concerned. So by that treaty, the territories which was under the control of the Burmese were came under the what is called the British India. Say for instance, Assam became the part of the British colonial empire. But in case of Manipur, it's interesting. You had the struggle by the then kings Gambhir Singh and the other Manipuris people trying to get independence from the 7-year devastation, which is called the Sahitere Kundakpa in the local history or local terminology. It also ended that kind of a thing, and Manipur regained, or the independence of Manipur was recognized, and Manipur become once again independent country after this Treaty of Yandubu. Now, because of this treaty, the influence of the war or interference by the Burmese to Manipur or Assam, or for the matter northern region, ended. And a very interesting thing is that finally the weakened Burma came to under the whole of Burma came under the British colonial rule in 1885, and it became a province of the British Empire. But Burma was separated from the British Indian Empire from in 1937. So you look at the history. This is also important. Now, other part of the during the British colonial rule, the region has what is called the four categories or the political entities, different categories. One is what we call the province of Assam, which was directly ruled by the British from Delhi. Other are two princely states of what is called Manipur and Tripura. So you have the monarchy there. They have some control over the administration and also religious and social life. Despite the fact that there's some kind of intervention is there. And in case of the then of course the last one is the the NEFA, or present day Arunachal Pradesh, which was known as a Northeastern Frontier Agency, which was directly controlled or ruled by the another category under the British colonial rule. So in other part of India, you have centuries of the British colonial rule, but in the case of Northeast India, you had only 121 years. But Manipur was the last to be to come under the British colonial rule. It was only for 56 years, right from 1891 to 1947. You had the war, and Manipur were defeated, and subsequently it became part of the British colonial empire. Please remember, the present day state of Nagaland, Mizoram, Meghalaya, they were once the districts or the parts of the the province of Assam, but later on they became the part of the state of the Assam. So that also important. And please remember, it was also a little bit surprising. Many of you may not know, Sikkim, had a separate independent kind of existence, but they joined into India in 1974 and became a full-fledged state of India in 1975. So what you find is the continuous evolution of the political entities within the region, and there's kind of a change, the composition and the name of the or status of the units which form the what is called the Northeast India. So the historical context is important. Now coming back to another thing about the British colonial rule and the partition, let's focus a little bit on this. This is important. On 15 August 1947, India got independence. But at the same time, you have another event which has a very deep impact on the India's political system, and also particularly on the Northeast India. That is the partition of India into India and Pakistan on religious lines. As a result of the partition, please remember, Northeastern region, or what we know today, it is being surrounded by as I said, the 5 countries, neighboring countries. That time is Pakistan, now Bangladesh. Then you have Myanmar, Burma, that is China, Bhutan, and Nepal. So you have a long porous borders. Sometimes it is not properly demarcated. Therefore, it has the free flow or kind of the immigration from the neighboring countries, including Bangladesh and also including Myanmar. So that led to the anti-foreigners movement, especially in Assam and Manipur. So the kind of system, the kind of the partition and the subsequent thing, you have an impact on the political and the other aspects also. Of course, the borders issue still remain, but with Bangladesh, the issue has been resolved to some great extent. And another dimension I want to mention is the fact that the same ethnic groups are living in different countries. Say Nagas are both in Indian side of the border, but also they are in Myanmar. Similarly, Kukisin people, they are also in Myanmar and they are also in Indian side. Okay, and other things that Bengali speaking people are in in Tripura, in Assam, but they are also in the Bangladesh. So you have this kind of thing due to partition and other factors. This kind of situation is there, but due to this strategic location and the fact that approximately 98% of the region is being surrounded by these 5 countries of as I said, Bangladesh, Myanmar, China, Tibet, and Nepal. And also the fact that from the earliest time, there was armed movements in the region for independence of the, say, first started by the Fijo in the Naga Hills, later on by the Lal Denga under in Lusai Hills, of course now today's Mizoram. Because of this movement, different point of time and strategic location, the security has been the primary consideration, one of the primary condition by the New Delhi or this central leadership. So partition and the geographical factor, location and everything, we have to keep in mind when you talk about later politics, socio-economic factors. So this is what I want to point out. Now coming back to the colonial rule is impact, I just briefly mentioned, you go through the material, but what happened? Colonialism as a phenomena, is based on the exploitation of the people and resources of the colonies. Other thing is that, of course, you have the denial or deprivation of the people in the decision-making process. But in the coming back to the Northeast India, British colonial rule also adopted what is called the divided rule. If you look at the particularly between the hills and the valley, okay, within the northern region, or you can see from the tribal and non-tribal kind of a thing. So you have the it was largely to serve the British interests, and even the naming of the the districts, it was named on the ethnic category or name. Say Naga Hills, for instance, or the Khasi Hills, Jaintia Hills, like that. So you have that kind of a categorization on the. But another impact of the colonialism in North India, but also to the subsequent issue is the the spread of the Christianity among the tribal or the hill population, and they didn't touch. The British did not do anything on the some kind of democratization. They still allowed the traditional political institutions like the tribal chief, the village council, of course, the economic pattern which was being controlled or decided by the hereditary male-based tribal chiefs still continue during the British rule. But on the other hand, in the valley areas, what happened? You introduce the right to property. Okay, so you have the introduction of the land revenue. Land revenue is collected by the British colonial rulers. You also imposition of the introduction of the IPC, Indian Penal Code, and of course you have the modern plantations of tea and trade and commerce, and of course Assam was having the oil, so it was being extracted, and one of the factor impact of the British colonial is the exploitation of the oil, and oil was exported to the the other areas. And if you look at the development of the coastal areas, and Assam being connected to the rest of India through the the roads and through the railways, is because of the largely because of the the oil and also tea. So you have to see in that context how the colonial rule and the policies has impacted the society, politics, and of course the latter also. Now coming back to the briefly about after 1947 till today, I just mentioned something about the Manipur that's important. As a princely state, it is considered that Manipur got independence on 15 August 1947, and I'll tell you why this is being important. One is the fact that there was a movement for the democracy and responsible government. And people did not like the monarchical system, so because of that movement demand, you had a Manipur Constitution Act 1947, and based on that, you have for the first time democratic elections, and you had 53 members of the legislative assemblies were elected, including Hizam Irabor. Okay, and you formed the one responsible government, the Council of Ministers, headed by the Chief Minister. But what happened was that, of course, monarchy rule was reduced to a constitutional monarch, and the after the Manipur was merged, after signing the formal merger agreement in 1949 in Ceylon, that elected assembly and responsible government was dissolved, and it was to be only revived or when Manipur became a part of as a state of India in 1972. So in that context, you have the continuation of the British legacies when Manipur India become a democratic, a sovereign democratic federal republic. So you have the continuation of the Assam became a state of Assam became a state of India, but Manipur and Tripura became the Parsi states, where it was ruled or controlled by the chief commissioners, and of course the NEFA, Northern Frontier Agency. So at different points of time, the evolution took place because of the political factors and the armed movements. So first state, out of Assam, after breaking up Assam, was Nagaland. It was from 1963. Then Mizoram, of course, because of the various factors, new state of Mizoram was created, and Meghalaya state was created in 1972. But before that, you had the issue of the language issue, which led to the some kind of alienation of the tribal or the hill areas from Assam. So what you find is the breaking up of the Assam into the different states. So you see that kind of process also. And before I come to that, just one point. In context of Manipur, where Manipur became a state in 1972, you have the mass movement where the participation of people from the hills and valley areas. At the same time, the political parties also involved. So in that context, the history of the Manipur is different from the rest of the other states, and also the fact that the creation of the state of Manipur was the demand or popular aspiration, including which was participated by the people but also by the political parties. So for today, I end here. In the next class, we'll meet the other features of the Northern India. Thank you for joining the class.